You wake to the sound of sandals scuffing stone, not hurried, not panicked, just determined, as if the person wearing them has known since birth exactly where they were going and has never once doubted the wisdom of dust. The light isn't sunlight yet, just a smear of gold at the edge of the reed curtain, thick with the smell of warm mud, stale incense, and last night's breath. Your body aches in the way straw mats always promise they won't, and the linen tunic, if it can still be called that, is rough against your skin, sweat salted and stiff with yesterday's effort. A fly lands on your eyelid. You don't blink. You're too tired. The room is silent except for the low murmur of someone praying 2 walls over, words too old to translate and too familiar to question. You are not a priest, not a noble, not even a proper scribe. You are a helper, a carrier, a body with legs that obey orders. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Today, you will move jars or bricks or sandals or sheep. You don't know yet. You never know. Until the sun fully rises and the supervisor with the broken tooth shouts your name like it's a punishment. The air tastes of charcoal and onion. Your stomach protests the memory of beer left out too long, flat and sour, but filling in the way shame is filling. You stretch, something pops, not bone, hope. You sit up. The fly moves to your nose. You still don't blink. The door is already open. It always is. Privacy is a luxury reserved for people with tombs. You have a bed and a cup and a scar on your heel shaped like a beetle. You touch the scar. It's damp. Probably from the heat. Probably. One curious theory says ancient Egyptian laborers were rotated every 10 days to prevent exhaustion. Another says they simply worked until their dreams stopped arriving. You stand. The floor is cool, not refreshing, judging. You step into the hallway. A child is already sweeping, though the dust is winning. It always wins. You nod to her. She doesn't nod back. Children don't owe you recognition here. You are not yet someone worth remembering. The light grows. A bird shrieks, sharp, sudden. Somewhere a pot shatters. Somewhere else, a man curses a god you've never dared to name. And just as you reach for your sandals, already crusted with yesterday's Nile, you realize it's only the beginning. You step outside and the light devours you instantly. Not with heat, not yet, but with that particular brightness that turns every surface into reflection, and every mistake into a shadow you cannot outrun. The air smells of wet limestone, sun-baked fish bones, and the sour breath of river frogs. You're not near the Nile, but the Nile is near you, always is. It clings to your lungs like damp memory, thick and old and inescapable. You walk because you must. The sandals slap softly against the clay path, stirring yesterday's dust which had only just begun to settle. You hear voices, shouted instructions, haggled prayers, and one man, possibly drunk, reciting tax records to no one. You avoid eye contact, not out of fear but efficiency. Looking means talking, and talking means someone might remember your name, and that always ends in labor. The supervisor greets you with the same grunt he gave you yesterday, and the day before, and possibly the day you were born. He hands you a basket. You don't ask what it's for. You already know it's heavier than it looks, and destined to end up in a place too far for gratitude and too near for dignity. You carry it anyway. The straps dig into your shoulder. The heat rises slowly, like an accusation. The world begins to shimmer, not from magic, but dehydration. You pass a boy with coal around his eyes and a reed pen behind one ear. He winks. You don't. You don't have the energy for charm or revenge or much of anything beyond forward motion. A breeze tries to help you. It fails. It brings only more dust and someone's breakfast smoke. It tastes like lentils and burnt flour. Your stomach growls a warning you choose to ignore. One curious theory says Egyptians used onions as a form of wages. Another says the onions used them. You stop beneath a half-built wall. The shade feels holy. You set the basket down. It groans. You groan louder. A woman nearby curses at a goat. The goat wins. You wipe your brow with the back of your hand and notice for the third time today that your fingers are cracked, dirty, and older than your age should allow. You don't remember how many days you've worked. The count is irrelevant. There is only before and after the harvest, and neither comes with rest. A child hands you a fig. You take it without a word. It's overripe, sweet, soft, almost alive. You swallow it whole. It does not thank you. And just as you begin to lift the basket again, your spine mutters something dark, and your knees reply with something worse. But you move anyway, because in Egypt, the sun does not wait. The road bends left, as it always does, around a shrine carved halfway into a sandstone wall, its edges worn smooth by decades of hands that touched it, not out of piety, but habit, like a polite nod to a neighbor you secretly resent. You glance at the god's face, eyes chipped, mouth amused, and murmur a prayer you don't mean but don't dare skip. The basket is heavier now, or maybe your arms are simply remembering how tired they were yesterday. The sun is high enough to start biting, not yet the full burn, but the warning nip of what's coming. A man passes on a donkey, chewing something that smells like garlic and regret. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't need to. You're beneath his notice and safely outside his competition. That's the only peace you'll get today. The path narrows into heat waves. The city hums, not with music or joy, but with friction. Tools grinding, voices rising, pots breaking, sandals dragging. You taste copper in the back of your throat. Maybe blood, maybe something else. A boy throws a stone at a dog. It misses. The dog stares at you like you owe it a reason. You don't have one. You pass a market where no one sells anything fresh, only things that were once edible or never quite were. A woman yells about beans. Another yells about the woman yelling. You keep your eyes low and your breath shallow. The Nile shimmers nearby, just visible between two mud brick houses. It smells like moss and fish dreams. You want to run to it, lie down, become algae. But the basket tugs at your shoulder like an impatient friend who doesn't know you stopped being a person 3 errands ago. One curious theory says the average Egyptian peasant walks 7 miles a day. Another says no one actually kept count because every mile felt like a debt being repaid from a past life. You shift the basket to the other hip. A mistake. The strap digs into your skin and finds a bruise that didn't introduce itself. You flinch. A nearby woman laughs, not unkindly, just knowingly. She has the same eyes you do, tired, alert, slightly amused at pain that won't end until it becomes scenery. You turn a corner and step into what should be shade, but isn't. The wall beside you radiates warmth like an oven that dreams of being a sun. Your mouth is dry, your breath is shallow, your sandals are softening into the road. And just as you begin to wonder if it's worth it, if anything in this life is worth carrying, someone calls your name from far ahead. Not in anger, not in love, just the tone of another task, another weight, another step. The voice that calls your name doesn't know you, not truly. It knows your shape, your obligation, the rhythm of your footsteps as they approach, with just enough hesitancy to mark you as obedient but not dangerous. You turn toward it, basket still on your hip, sweat now a second tunic clinging to your back, and the smell of sun-warmed dust clogs your nostrils, thick with the scent of dung, baked barley, and distant river rot. The man waving wears a linen sash, not because of rank, but because someone told him once it made him look important, and he believed it. He hands you a sealed jug with instructions too vague to argue with, and gestures vaguely eastward, toward a district you've only entered once, and that was by accident. You nod, not because you agree, but because it's faster than explaining you haven't eaten today. The jug is warm, sweating slightly, and heavier than it looks. Everything is heavier than it looks. You begin walking again, the jug pressed awkwardly to your ribs, the basket now hooked on your forearm, and every tendon in your right hand whispering curses in Old Egyptian. The streets here are narrower, the walls taller, the shadows thinner and meaner somehow, like they've learned the shape of suffering and now mock it. You pass a vendor fanning flies away from salted fish that smells like betrayal. A dog limps across your path with the weary confidence of someone who's been kicked enough to expect nothing worse. You wonder briefly if you were ever that dog. The thought doesn't linger. Nothing does. Not when your thirst has dried the edges of your thoughts into papyrus. One curious theory says ancient Egyptians bathed more often than most medieval Europeans. Another says they stopped noticing the smell after the third hour of labor. You pause in an alley that isn't quite shade and isn't quite safe. A child watches you from beneath a hanging cloth. Her eyes are large, unblinking, older than yours. You don't wave. She wouldn't understand. Or worse, she would. You adjust the jug, which sighs against your chest like it too is tired of this world. Your arms burn, your breath is shallow. Someone nearby is singing. Not a song exactly, just a tone repeated until it forgets its own meaning. You pass a door that smells of wine and salt. Laughter bubbles from inside, sharp and private. You keep walking. You are not welcome there, and even if you were, you'd have to take your sandals off first. They'd never survive it. And just as your foot hits the next step, the jug shifts slightly, and you think, for one long, dangerous moment, about letting it fall. But you don't. You don't drop the jug, not because of virtue or fear or even habit, but because dropping it would make a sound. And that sound would pull eyes toward you. And you've survived long enough in this city by being as quiet as stone and just as overlooked. You adjust your grip, your fingers now slick with sweat and resignation, and continue down the alley, where the walls lean inward like tired shoulders, and the air tastes of mildew, soot, and the faint tang of copper that might be rust, or blood, or the memory of both. You pass a closed gate painted with symbols you can't read and wouldn't trust if you could. A rooster shrieks from a nearby roof and you flinch, not because you're startled, but because it reminds you how long it's been since you've eaten something with a face. The heat presses in now, not radiant, not ambient, personal, like a large man breathing too close. You duck beneath a low awning, the cloth above your head brushing your scalp with dust and ash and the scent of smoke that never quite became fire. Your knees ache, they always do. The jug sighs again, or maybe you do. One curious theory says most Egyptian workers developed asymmetric spines by 30. Another says the gods designed the human back to fail just in time for death to feel like a relief. You reach the end of the alley where the path opens into a courtyard crowded with baskets, jugs, shouts, and flies. Someone shoves past you. You don't look. You never look. Looking means acknowledging. A man is shouting about cucumbers. Another is passed out in the corner, mouth open, arm over his face like he's shielding himself from judgment. You envy him just a little. You cross the courtyard, step over a chicken, sidestep a boy vomiting lentils, and finally find the place. 3 steps of stone, a carved doorway, the smell of fermented dates and limestone. You set the jug down gently, your fingers tingle. You straighten, something in your back cracks like dry reeds. No one thanks you, of course not. You didn't expect it. Gratitude is for acts that could have been avoided. This was inevitable. You turn to leave, and just as your foot finds the path again, the sky shifts color, just slightly, just enough to warn you that afternoon is beginning, and with it a new heat, a new weight, and more names called from places you don't want to go. You walk back without the jug, but not lighter. The ache doesn't leave with the load. It lingers, settles, becomes part of your gait, a rhythm your body now knows better than sleep. The sun has climbed, arrogant and golden, bleeding into every crevice of the street like it owns the dust it stirs. You squint, not for vision, for dignity. You pass 2 men arguing over the price of spoiled grain, their voices hoarse with heat and resentment. A donkey brays nearby, mournful and indifferent, like it's telling the same joke it told yesterday, and nobody laughed then either. You wipe your neck with the back of your arm. It doesn't help. It only moves the sweat around. The road shimmers, liquid mirage, a cruel suggestion of water in a world that runs on beer and salt. You want to sit, you won't. You know the rule, stop moving and you become scenery, a decoration for the edge of someone else's story, a shadow that will not be remembered. You reach the market again. It's louder now, angrier. The fish is still there, still betraying. The same dog has joined another, and they eye you like they've placed bets on your collapse. You don't give them the satisfaction. One curious theory says Egyptian peasants believed in multiple souls, one for breath, one for memory, one that wandered during dreams. Another theory says they never expected all of those souls to return each evening. You pass a woman pounding something in a stone bowl. The sound echoes, rhythmic, quick. You feel your own curl into fists, not from rage, from memory. You reach a wall that throws a sliver of shade. You take it, just for a breath. The heat doesn't stop, it never does. It waits, it tests, it wins. You lean your head back against the wall. The stone is warm, not comforting, familiar, like an old enemy who once saved your life and never lets you forget it. A boy runs past, nearly knocking you over. He laughs. You don't. You can't afford that kind of energy. You push yourself upright. Your knees hesitate. You win the argument, barely. A voice calls your name again. Not the supervisor, not someone who owes you anything, just a name shouter. Another task, another basket, another jug. You move toward it, because in Egypt rest is not granted, it is stolen. And even then it comes disguised as motion. You follow the voice not because it's kind or familiar, but because it's the only thing giving your day shape, and shape is the closest thing to meaning in a life carved from repetition and dust. The sun has turned cruel now, no longer warming but accusing, as if your skin itself were guilty of surviving too many mornings. The new basket they hand you is smaller but smells worse. Fermented onions, cracked pottery, and something sticky you don't recognize, but suspect used to be meat. You do not flinch. Flinching is for people who expect relief. You lift it with your left arm this time, testing whether the pain there is more bearable than in the right. It is not. You adjust anyway. You take 2 steps and immediately regret them, because the sand beneath your feet shifts just enough to remind you that stability is an illusion in a city built from bones and compromise. You head toward the western quarter, where the streets narrow and the houses lean in too close, as if trying to hear your secrets or confess their own. A child runs by, trailing a string with no toy attached. just a knot that somehow matters. You smell yeast baking somewhere nearby, and your stomach makes a soft noise like longing. You ignore it. Hunger is a luxury you're not rich enough to indulge. One curious theory says Egyptian peasants ate better during religious festivals. Another says they simply ate less resentfully. You pause at a corner where the plaster is peeling from a wall and revealing a faded mural. A god you can't name, holding a crook, smiling without comfort. Someone has scratched a crude line across its eyes. You pretend not to notice. You step past it into a lane that smells of copper dust and spiced oil. Two women argue over a spindle. A man shouts about bread mold. A baby cries somewhere high above you, the sound warped by clay and time. You breathe through your mouth now. The air is thick, not with smoke or perfume, but with people. Too many, all at once, pressing against the walls of your mind. You reach the doorway. No one's there to greet you. You leave the basket in the shade, not for respect, but mercy. The basket has suffered enough. You turn to go. A breeze passes through the alley like an apology. It fails. You hear your name again. Higher up this time, a voice from a balcony. You don't look. You just begin walking again. Steps slower now, each one saying, "Yes, I'm still here," and "No, I don't know why." You walk not toward anything, but away from everything else, your body pulled forward by the inertia of obligation and the echo of tasks not yet assigned. The sun has begun to fall, but the heat clings to the walls like an insult that refuses to be forgotten. Your skin is slick with the paste of sweat and street dust, and your feet ache in that ancient, ancestral way that says you're walking not just for yourself, but for every barefoot ancestor who once knelt before a pharaoh and dared not raise their eyes. You pass a doorway where someone is grinding pigment, blue from crushed lapis, and the air smells like powdered stone and ambition. A woman leans out a window and throws a bowl of gray water into the street. It splashes near your sandals, warm, rank, dismissive. You don't react. That would require energy, or pride, or some combination of both you haven't felt since the flood season ended. Ahead, a cluster of men sit beneath a linen canopy, drinking something that smells faintly of fermented figs and poor judgment. They laugh too loudly. The sound grates. One of them nods at you, not friendly, not cruel, just that casual acknowledgement that marks you as labor and nothing more. You nod back, because not nodding would take more courage than you have left. The street narrows again. The walls bleed heat. The smell of clay and goat hair and bitter herbs fills your throat. One curious theory says Egyptians placed perfumed cones on their heads during feasts to cover the stench of sweat. Another says they wore them so they could pretend. For one night, that beauty didn't rot. You turn a corner and nearly step on a cat. It hisses. You mutter an apology. The cat disappears without forgiving you. You pass a shrine pressed into the wall, one of the small ones, with offerings of beer crust and dried dates already half picked over by flies. You drop a pebble there, not because you believe, but because superstition is cheaper than misfortune. Your legs are slowing now, not from weakness, from warning. The body knows things the mind refuses to admit. You find a bit of shade beneath a crooked awning and lean against the plaster wall. A crack runs through it, shaped like a river or a scar. You close your eyes just for a breath, a heartbeat, a pause. And then, without warning, the call comes again. Not your name this time, just a word. Fetch. You open your eyes. The basket is waiting. It always is. You lift the new basket without looking inside, because looking would mean knowing, and knowing makes it harder to pretend that this is just movement and not servitude. The weight tells you enough. Grain, maybe, or bricks disguised as charity. The handle cuts into your palm like it's trying to write a message in your skin. You walk. The sun has begun its descent, turning the sky into a dull bruise, the color of tired gods and forgotten debt. The street smells different now, not fresher, just older. Like the day itself is exhaling slowly, releasing the scent of every failure that went unnoticed before noon. A woman sweeps her doorstep with a palm frond. She pauses to stare at you. Not cruelly, not kindly, just long enough to remind you that your suffering isn't invisible. It's simply expected. You nod. She does not nod back. You keep walking. The road slopes upward, stones shifting under your feet with every step like they resent being stepped on. You pass a boy chasing a rolling jug, its lid bouncing with a hollow clunk that sounds like a lazy drumbeat for a song no one remembers how to sing. The basket shifts. Your spine protests. You ignore it. That part of you gave up negotiating weeks ago. A breeze stirs the edge of your tunic, bringing with it the scent of dry reeds, goat sweat, and a distant puff of incense. Someone's prayer floating toward the wrong ears. One curious theory says peasants sometimes snuck into temples just to touch the stone and feel something unbroken. Another says the stone touched them back and kept part of their ache. You turn into an alley that wasn't there yesterday, or maybe just never wanted to be found. It's quiet here. Too quiet. The kind of silence that feels like someone watching with their breath held. You pass quickly. You do not belong in stillness. At the alley's end, you find the delivery point, a door barely taller than your chest, carved with symbols of barley and protection. You set the basket down with care. Not reverence, self-preservation. Baskets dropped too loudly have a way of returning full. You straighten, roll your shoulders, listen for the pop that always comes and never helps. The light is shifting. The dust glows gold. A voice behind you says nothing, only clears a throat. You turn. It's a new face. Pale eyes, thin lips, no emotion. He hands you a jug. You take it without speaking, and just as you start walking back into the narrowing light, you realize the basket may be gone, but the weight has not left you. It never does. The jug is cool at first, like it remembers morning, like it doesn't yet know the day is ending. You cradle it against your hip, its clay surface pitted and damp, and the rhythm of your steps adjusts instinctively. Left, right, shift, right, left. Adjust the body's ancient dance with burden. The sky is bleeding now, streaked with rose and rust, and every wall casts a longer shadow than the one before. The road smells of trampled fruit and tired fires, and the breeze has turned lazy, heavy, with the sour breath of still water. You move through it all like a ghost, with chores. Children dart past you, chasing a hoop made from bent copper and wire. One nearly collides with your elbow. He does not apologize. You don't slow down. Ahead, a man sharpens a blade on the stone steps of his home, his strokes slow and steady, like he's grinding time instead of metal. The sound scrapes the inside of your head. You pass him without comment. His eyes do not follow you. That's a blessing. You take a shortcut through a narrow corridor, barely wide enough for two baskets to kiss. It stinks of fermented sweat and rotting onion skins. You try not to breathe, but the body refuses absence. Every inhale tastes of effort. Every exhale feels like betrayal. One curious theory says laborers were given oil to soften their skin and ease their aches. Another says the oil was only offered when their screams got too loud. You reach the courtyard, the one where dogs sleep beneath carts and old women gossip in half-voiced curses. They pause as you pass, not because of who you are, but because they've run out of things to say. You leave the jug beside a doorway that smells of herbs and blood, and someone's failed healing. The door doesn't open. That means it's been received. That's enough. You turn to leave, but your legs hesitate. Not with pain, not with doubt, just fatigue masquerading as thought. You stand there a moment too long. Someone shouts something distant. The shadows grow teeth. You walk, not home. There is no such direction, just away from the last task and toward whatever waits with a new one. You rub your palm against your tunic, trying to wipe away the sting. It lingers. Of course it does, and just as you round the last corner, your foot catches on a loose stone and the world lurches slightly. But you do not fall. You never do. Not fully. Not yet. You reach the edge of the quarter just as the lamps begin to flicker awake, low flames behind oiled parchment, casting shadows too large for the things that make them. The smell changes here, more smoke, more spice, more sweat that's been wrapped in perfume and sold as virtue. Your shoulders droop but keep moving, as if driven not by will but by the invisible pull of expectation. You pass a girl lighting incense at a doorstep, the smoke rising in thin silver threads, sweet and sharp, clinging to your tongue like burnt honey and regret. The air is thicker now, the kind of thick that presses against your chest, as though reminding you that breath is borrowed and the lender is impatient. A man calls your name. It's not the same man as before, but it might as well be. You don't look at his face. You don't need to. He holds a satchel. You take it. It smells of dried meat and damp papyrus, and you sling it over your shoulder, as if it were yours all along. You step forward. The earth beneath your feet has cooled slightly, not soft but less angry. You hear music, reed flute, uneven drum, the rustle of laughter that doesn't belong to you. You do not stop to listen. One curious theory says Egyptian workers sometimes danced in secret to shake the pain from their bones. Another says their feet kept moving even in dreams. A cart passes, pulled by a bull too old for anything but forward. You catch the driver's eye. He doesn't smile. Neither do you. There's a kind of understanding in that. The satchel swings with your steps, light but obnoxious, like a child who insists on being carried just because. The sky is almost black now, and the stars blink awake without urgency. You cross a threshold into a quieter part of town. Fewer shouts, more murmurs. The door where the satchel belongs is already ajar. You leave it just inside. You do not knock. You do not wait. You are not expected. You are necessary. You retrace your steps through alleys that now smell of wet clay and fatigue. A dog growls, then quiets. You pass a mural faded into nothing. You pass a boy asleep on his knees. You pass your own reflection in a puddle too shallow to matter, and just as the night thickens around you like a worn-out blanket, someone else calls. Not your name, not even a word, just a sound, sharp and short and full of authority. You turn. You answer, because that's what you do. You answer. You answer, not because you have strength left, but because the silence that follows a command unanswered is worse than the labor itself. Your name has become a kind of currency now, passed from mouth to mouth, worn at the edges, no longer yours but still required for access. The figure in the dark holds out a torch, not to guide you, to mark you. You nod and take it, the wood slick with old resin, the flame sputtering like it too is tired of this errand. Your arm aches anew as you lift it higher, casting light on a street that was never meant to be seen this late. Shadows leap from cracks in the plaster walls, long and mean, like memories that grew teeth. You move, slowly. The torch hisses when the wind turns a corner, but it holds. You reach the far edge of the housing row, where the ground slopes down into the workers' pits, old storage tunnels, half-canapped cellars, places where heat goes to die and sweat goes to pray. They tell you to bring something back, a jar, a box, no one says what's inside. You descend the steps carved into the earth, each one shallower than it should be, worn smooth by 1,000 cautious heels. The air down here is different, cooler, yes, but still. It carries the flavor of mildew and salt and something older than both. You breathe through your mouth. The torch reveals rows of amphorae, some sealed, some broken, all anonymous. You walk slowly, your sandals sticking slightly to the damp floor. A lizard watches you from a crack in the wall. You envy its stillness. One curious theory says certain temple workers slept underground during summer months. Another says they simply stopped trying to leave. You find the jar. It's unmarked, heavy, slick with condensation or grief. You lift it. Your back protests. You ignore it, the way you always do. You climb the stairs again, the torch flickering wildly now, like it's trying to flee. You emerge back into the night, which is thicker now, more insistent, wrapping around you like wet wool. The stars have multiplied. Or maybe you're just seeing double. You return the jar to the one who asked, but no words are exchanged. None are needed. You are the vessel. The night is long, and just as you turn to leave, your name is called again, by someone else, from somewhere new. Of course it is. The torch is taken from your hand. Your arms fall limp, but your legs, they remember. They always do. You keep walking, though the part of you that once listened to reason stopped hours ago. The city is nearly asleep now. Its noise is muffled, its anger softened, its heat bled into the stone until even the walls feel too tired to echo. The alleys you move through are darker now, lit only by slivers of moonlight and the occasional flicker of someone else's borrowed flame. You are handed a bundle. No one says where it's going. You do not ask. It's wrapped in linen, still warm, oddly shaped, smelling faintly of milk, sweat, and something metallic. You cradle it close, like a secret, like a confession. The bundle stirs, it breathes. You realize it's a child. You do not stop walking. The instructions were silent, but clear. You know where this kind of bundle goes, beyond the vendor stalls, past the broken amphora, down the path that smells of ashes and overripe figs. The path is familiar, too familiar. It winds behind the old granary where nothing grows anymore except regret. The buildings here lean more. They listen. You do not speak to them. You keep your step soft, your breath shallower than necessary. The child doesn't cry. Not yet. It's too young to know what's coming. One curious theory says unwanted children were left in temple courtyards, wrapped in ribbons and quiet prayers. Another says they simply vanished, between one breath and the next, like smoke or names carved in dry wood. You reach the courtyard. The wall is high, the gate is half open. A torch burns inside, but no faces are visible. You place the bundle near the threshold. You do not knock, you do not linger, you do not bless. You simply let your hands empty and your shoulders forget for just a moment how it felt to carry a life. You step backward. The torchlight does not follow. You turn, you walk. The silence that follows you out feels different, heavier, colder, like the city is closing one eye to sleep and keeping the other open just to watch you leave. You rub your hands against your tunic, not to clean them, just to remind yourself they still exist. You step through a puddle that wasn't there before, the water cold against your heel. A cat stares at you from a ledge, unblinking, eternal. And just as you step around a broken jar, the wind shifts and someone shouts again, not for you, not yet, but loud enough that you know your night isn't over. You follow the voice like a thread in the dark, not because you want to, but because your body no longer questions where it's pulled. Your legs move as if someone else owns them, someone with more patience, more muscle, less mind. The streets have emptied now, but not in peace. They have receded, like breath before a storm. You walk past shuttered stalls and sleeping dogs, through silence thick enough to chew. The last bits of warmth cling to the bricks like memories that refuse to cool. Your name is called again, closer this time, from behind a curtain swaying slightly in the breeze. You approach. You don't knock. You've learned by now that questions take longer than obedience. A hand emerges, thin and dry, holding a scroll. You take it. It smells of ink, sweat, and oil. Freshly written, hastily sealed. The hand disappears without a word. You hold the scroll like it might bite. Maybe it already has. You're told nothing about where to take it. Of course not. That's your role. To know without being told, to guess correctly, or vanish. You start walking again toward the temple quarter where the stones are smoother, the shadows sharper, and the air carries the scent of burned cedar and authority. The scroll presses against your chest, stiff and accusatory. You wonder what it says. You wonder if it matters. One curious theory says royal scribes used secret ink to pass forbidden messages, mixed from gall nuts and ash, legible only by moonlight. Another theory says the ink was ordinary, but the lies it carried were sacred. You pass beneath an archway covered in glyphs, worn smooth by 1,000 shoulders braver than yours. A guard stands at the corner. He sees you. He does not stop you. That's either a mercy or a mistake. You keep walking. The temple wall looms ahead, high and pale in the moonlight, cold as debt. The door is ajar. You slip inside. The hallway smells of dust and jasmine and something older than language. A priest waits. He does not greet you. He extends a hand. You give him the scroll. He doesn't thank you. He doesn't even blink. You nod and turn to go, but something holds you there. Maybe your own spine, finally too tired to pivot. The priest speaks. Just once. Come back before dawn. Then he's gone. The words hang in the air like wet cloth. You step outside. The wind has risen. The stars are gone now, veiled by clouds or fate or something less poetic. And just as you begin the walk back across the stone yard, your knees buckle slightly. You catch yourself. Of course you do. No one else will. You walk with knees that remember collapsing, with feet that carry not your weight, but the weight of being summoned again and again into other people's needs. The city is nearly silent now, not with rest, but with held breath. Every doorway sleeps. Every rooftop forgets, but you're still awake, still moving, the rhythm of your body no longer synced with time but with the endlessness of obligation. Your tunic clings to you, damp from effort and the long companionship of dusk. You reach the stone steps near the canal. You sit, not because you're allowed to, but because sitting is the only rebellion left that won't be punished. The air smells of stagnant water, fish bones, cold clay, and lotus petals someone spilled hours ago. You listen, not for danger, for absence, for the kind of silence that says no one needs you for one brief breath. You close your eyes. Behind your lids the city glows, not gold, but red, rusted with memory, and worn flat by routine. Your fingers twitch. You realize you've been clenching them since sunset. One curious theory says Egyptian laborers sometimes dreamed of being reborn as birds. Another says they dreamed only of being forgotten. You hear footsteps behind you. You do not turn. You know already. It's another task, another face, another jug or scroll or bundle or name to carry, like a blister you're never allowed to pop. But the voice doesn't speak, it waits. You open your eyes. The canal reflects nothing. Not the moon, not the torchlight, not even your face. You stand slowly, every bone in your body sounding like someone else sighing. You turn to face the voice. A child, barefoot, holding a message. He does not speak, only nods, solemn as a god who's seen the end of things. You take the message. You don't even feel it anymore. The child leaves. You do not follow. You unfold the paper. It's blank. Of course it is. Not everything that is carried is meant to be read. Some things are meant only to remind you that you are still moving, still useful, still here. You drop the paper into the canal. It does not float. It sinks like a secret. And just as you begin to climb the stairs again, one by one, slowly, carefully, the first light of morning touches the horizon. Not warmly, not triumphantly, but like someone reopening a wound just to see if it's healed.